today we're going to be looking at our first Microsoft Fabric hand-to-hand project together. So in this section, we are going to be having two sections. The first section is where we are going to be creating our lake house. We are going to be we're going to be connecting data from different data source into our lakehouse, while the second part is going to be all about data modeling and building a very simple Power BI report. So the first session, like I said, we create our lakehouse and get data from different source. Data can come from different source, like we can have your data coming from SharePoint. You can have your data coming from either your Azure SQL database, or your data can also come from your SQL Server database as well, which is on your local machine. We can also you know, connect or get data into the lakehouse through the file section of the lakehouse. So we are going to be starting with the very simple one, so that for people that are just getting started with Microsoft Fabric to understand, how the Fabric environment actually works. Then the second part is going to be all about data modeling and like I said, building a very simple Power BI report. Everything is going to be achieved on the Fabric environment itself. So let's get started. Like let's see how this work in the Fabric environment. So I'll go to my Fabric environment. Before you can actually work on the Fabric environment, you need to have like a Fabric trial, so that you can use it for creating all these. And so before you can have the Fabric experience, you need to have like a Fabric trial account, or if your organization have a license, you can just tell your IT to enable Fabric for you. So okay, so the first thing that I'm going to be doing is that I have some work that I've done here, but so from my workspace, I'll create a new workspace. So from my workspace, I'm going to create a new workspace. So we'll be using this workspace to demonstrate our project now. So I'm going to create a workspace. I'll call it demo. I'll just call it WWI demo. So this is a worldwide importer demo. So this is the demo that we'll be using for this project. So I'm creating a workspace. The workspace is where you can collaborate with other people. So create a workspace, then you can do some settings if you want to do some settings there. So you can see that the license that I'm using is a trial license at the moment, and I'll just click on, if the data you are working with is a very large data set, you can choose the large semantic model storage format. And if the data is not that large, you can choose the small semantic. So let's just choose the large semantic model. So then I'll click on apply. So creating my workspace already. Okay, so I have my workspace here already. So inside my workspace, you can see that there is nothing inside the workspace. The workspace is empty. So the first thing that I'll create inside my workspace is to create a folder. I like creating a folder because it helps me to organize my work very well. So I'll create a folder. I'll call it let me just call it worldwide um, worldwide importer 2. Yeah, worldwide importer 2, because I already have worldwide importer before in another workspace, but not in the same workspace. So I'm going to create a folder. So I've created a folder called worldwide importer 2. So inside this folder, this is where I'm going to be putting all the objects that we are going to be creating. I'll be moving them inside the worldwide importer tool, because, like I said, folder helps you to organize your work very well. and I like my work to be organized as well. Okay, so after creating the folder, the next thing that I'm going to do is to create a lake house. A lake house is just like a is like a one place where you can get all your data in the Fabric environment. So a lakehouse is very, very important for us. So we are going to be creating a lakehouse. Because I have some lakehouse that I've created before, that's why the option comes up. So let me just pick this the first one, since we are using different lakehouse, different workspace now, so I can still make use of this. So www high, that's worldwide importer lakehouse. So that is the name of the lakehouse that I'm creating now. So I'm going to create this lakehouse. I'm going to create this lake, and please note that for you to create a lakehouse, if the name already exists in that particular workspace, you won't be able to create that lake house. So it will prompt you that you should change the name. So it's because this is another workspace that I'm creating. That is why it works for me. Okay, so now we are now in our lake house. So you can see that we are now in our lake house. Um, so we are now in our lake house, and when you create a lake house, so let me show you something. When you create a lake house, we have about three objects. Can you see? We have the lake house, we have the semantic model, and we have the SQL endpoint that will be created with the lake house. So like I said, I like my work to be organized. I'm going to move this lake house into the folder that I created earlier. So I'm going to move them here. So once I move them here, I can open the folder now and go back to my lake house. So inside my lake house, so this is exactly where we what we want to achieve. So from the lake house, we now want to start getting data into our lakehouse, because lakehouse is just like a one place where you can ingest your data, whether they are whether it is a structured data or whether it is not a structured data. So for structured data, you put your structured data in the table section, while the unstructured one and the structured one as well, you can put it in the file section. But mostly the structured one is in the table section, while the unstructured one is in the file section. Okay, so like I said, we have this data across different data, in different places. So this is the data that we'll be working with, and all these data are sitting down in different places. So for example, if I go back to my local machine, you can see that we have this www data date. The category is on my local machine, and if you go to my data SQL database as well, I have the worldwide order, the order details table. I have it in my in my database, which is my SQL server. I have the data here, and so I also have another data, in my in the warehouse, in another warehouse. So if I go to my project, this is another workspace. If I go to my project in another workspace, I have I have a warehouse there. So inside the warehouse, I have this fact order table sitting down inside the warehouse. So you can see that our data now are in different locations, right? One is on my local machine, another one is on SharePoint folder, some are in SQL database, and different sources. Now we want to bring all these data, we want to bring them together into the lakehouse. We want to bring all the data that are in different data source into the lakehouse. So what I'm going to do is that, so there are different ways of bringing data into the warehouse, into our lakehouse, which we are going to be looking at today. So I'm going back to my lakehouse, to the workspace that I created. So from the workspace, um, I'll go to the lakehouse back. So I'll go to my folder, then click on the lakehouse. Then from the lakehouse now, we now want to ingest data, from the different data source that I mentioned earlier. So one of the you know the one of the ways we can get data into the Lakehouse is using the shortcut. We can use the data flow gen tool, or you can even create a pipeline. So we'll be looking at some of these option, all these option. We'll be looking at the shortcut, the data flow gen tool, and the data pipeline. Then upload files. We'll also look at this as well. So the only one that we'll not be looking at is the event stream that we'll not be looking at. Okay, so let's get ingesting our data into our lake house. So to ingest our data into the lake house, so let's first use the shortcut. So what is a shortcut? A shortcut is just like you have your data sitting down on a database, right? So we don't want to have a duplicate record of such data. So what we can do is that we can just create a shortcut from that database or from that warehouse into the lakehouse. So that means that the data will still be sitting down in your existing database or lakehouse. What we are just doing is just like you are trying to mirror the data into your lakehouse. You understand? So that's the first thing that we're going to be looking at now. So I'll click on in my lakehouse. Can you see that I'm inside my lakehouse now? I'll click on get data and I'll go to new shortcut. So when you click on new shortcut, it's going to launch a wizard, this particular page for you. So you can say Microsoft One Lake, you can even do a shortcut to some other cloud solution like Amazon, Azure Data Lake Storage and Dataverse, then even Google Cloud Storage as well. So but right now, like I said, I have another workspace which I have created a warehouse there, and I'm going to create a shortcut from that warehouse into my new lake house now. So I'll click on Microsoft One Lake Hub. So here now you can see the warehouse. This is the warehouse, and data that I want to this is the data that I want to create a shortcut from. So right now I'm going to click on the data, then I'll click on next. So after clicking on the next, I'll click on the drop down, or this is the only table that is inside the warehouse. So I'll click on this TBO. Um, yeah, so I'll click on the facts. I'll click on the fact orders. I'll click on the fact order, then I'll click on next. So I'll click on next, yet to create. So you can see now, so we are creating our shortcut now. So it says succeed. So now, can you see? So can you see now that we have our fat table inside our lakehouse. So this is a shortcut that we created. The data is actually sitting down in the warehouse. We are only creating a shortcut into our lakehouse. So you can see the data is trying to load. You will see the preview of the data once it's load. So we'll see the preview of the data once it's load. Okay, so you can see we have about 830 rows of information. Okay, so that is the first way where on how we can ingest data into the lakehouse. So you can see that this data we're able to ingest it into the table section. Like I said, we have two sections in the lakehouse, the table section and the file section. We'll talk about the file section later on. So another way we can also get data into the lake house is to use the pipeline. So we're going to be creating a pipeline and we'll do some settings and all. So let's see how we can also ingest data using the pipeline. So using the pipeline, I have a data on my SQL server, right? Which is this particular data. So let me just do like okay, so let me connect. So I just want us to see the data before I ingest it into the Lakehouse. So scripts data select. Let's select. Okay, so let me open this. So let's select top 1000. So you can see the data. This is our data on our SQL database. So now I'm going to ingest this data into the lakehouse. So let's see how we can ingest this data into the lakehouse. So the method we are going to be using now is different. We'll be using the data pipeline method to do that. So so the pipeline is opening. So you can see no pipeline. So we need to rename this pipeline. So I'm going to call it WW. So because I have created so many pipeline before, call WW pipeline. So I'll just pick anyone. So and I will be able to pick the name because this is another workspace. Assuming that I'm using the other workspace, it won't work. So I'll just click on the create the pipeline. So let's create the pipeline. So what is a pipeline? A pipeline is a let's say is a workflow. When you want to schedule something, you want to orchestrate something. Okay, after this process, this next process should come in. So we use pipeline for different activities. Anyway, so but for simplicity, let's just proceed with what we want to achieve with our pipeline at the moment. Okay, so right now we want to connect to our database. So you can see that we have different data sources that you can connect with your pipeline. You can see SQL Server, which is the one that we want to actually use. SQL Server, Dataverse, SharePoint, Azure SQL Database. If you click on more, we have a lot of more data source that you can connect to. You can connect to a lot of data source as well. You have different data source that you can connect to. So right now, for people that have, Azure SQL database, you can connect from Azure SQL database. So right now, I'm using the SQL Server database. I'll click on SQL Server database. Then I need to put in some credential, some of the server and all. So I will go to my database. Then I will I will have to connect my server name. Connect my server name. So connect my server. Then my database is kind of optional. So let me see. My database is this. This is my database. So let's connect the database as well. So I'll connect the database then. So before you can connect your SQL Server database to your Fabric, you must have a gateway. So I have already set up a gateway before. So you have to set up a gateway before this can work. And yeah, so now the next thing that we'll do is that I'm going to use I will use my on-premises gateway. Then I will change my authentication to window. Then I'll have to put in my credential, my window credential here. So I'll put this here. Then I'll put my username. I'll put my username there, my password. My window username and password. Connection name. So let me just call it demo. So that's how, yeah. So connection name is this demo. So I'm going to click on next. I'm going to click on next. So just make sure that you're putting you input the right things here. You understand? Make sure you include the right things there. So now we're trying to connect to the data source. Make sure that you have your gateway set up and your gateway is also running. So gateway is actually used to if you want to connect from your on-prem, which is your local server, your local machine to the cloud, you need a gateway. Assuming that you are using like a cloud solution, you don't need a gateway. So I will show you an example of cloud solution, in our next um, data connection. So now when you try to connect, there is an error message that is going to pop out. So you can say we are unable to connect to data source using an on we are unable to connect to the data source using an encrypted connection. To use an encrypted connection, uncheck use encrypted connection and try again. So you will get this error message. I really do not know why this message come. Maybe the reason why Microsoft is not enabling this process to go to flow like this. So, but don't worry. So what you will do is that just make sure that you get to this point, right? You get this error message, and so what you will do next is that just cancel this. But one thing that you should notice is that our connection name here is what order underscore demo. That's our connection name. So I will cancel this. Yes, cancel. So what I will do is that when you cancel it, it's going to take you to the to your default home page of the pipeline. So this is the pipeline. We did not see this page when we started the pipeline, but this is the default page of the pipeline. So what you will need to do next is that you will just click on copy data, and instead of using the copy assistance, you will click on the add to canvas. Okay, so now on the how to canvas, this is when you will see this copy data. Now this copy data, we need to do some setup here. So here I'm going to rename this to WWI underscore let's say other details. So that is the data name. So you can just rename it to the data name that you want to create, you want to bring in. So W data is worldwide import other details. Then what else? What else? Okay, so we're not doing anything here. So we need to connect our source, our data source. So I'm going to click on the select drop down, right? So if you check here now, our connection name, don't forget the connection name is not here. So I'm going to click on more. We tried to connect it the other time. So let's see if it's going to pop out. So let's just scroll down. Can you see? So this is the name. Can you see the WWI order the underscore demo? So that is the order. That is the name that we created. So I'm going to pick it now. I'm going to select it now. So we are selecting that connection now. Okay, so can you see we have selected the connection? Then I'll click on the connection type. Our connection type is what? SQL server. So can you see? Then SQL server. So now it's asking for the database. This is the database, right? Then it's asking for table. We are using the table, and we are using the table. So the next thing that we need to do is that let's see if we can preview the data. Okay, it's saying field, right? Okay, so let's click on enter manual. So we're going to enter the table manually. So now the schema name of the data is our what is DBO. So this is the schema name. So we'll copy the schema name, then put it here. Then the table name is what? The table name is this is the table name. This is the table name. So we'll put in the table name here. Then let's try to preview now. So let's try to preview now. Okay, so can you see? And this is exactly the data that we have in our database, right, in our SQL database. So now you can see now that we are trying to bring in all those data into the lakehouse. So we have bypassed that encrypted issue that we are having the other time. So now that we have passed this level, now let's go to our, we have connected to the data source. So the next thing that we need to do now is that we need to get to our destination. Where are we getting, where are we putting this, where is our destination? So our destination is our destination is, let me see. So we need to pick our destination lake house. We need to pick our destination lake house. So we need to pick our destination lake house. Okay, so I think that should be a lake. No, it's not a new lake house. So we need to pick our destination lake house. So let's click on view more. Okay, so I want to be sure of the lake house that we are. Okay, yes, this is the lake house. So the WWI demo, this is our workspace and this is the lake house. So we are picking this lake house. So we are picking this lake house. Then our root folder is table. Then it's asking us for the table name. So when you click on the loading, you can see that there is no table. So we need to name our the table that we want to load our data into. So we have an existing table inside our lakehouse, which is the fact order. Don't forget that this is another table. This is the order details table. It is different from the fact order. So don't select the table that you have there before. So you have to create a new table for yourself. So we are going to create new table. And what is the table name? We'll call it WWI order order details. Order details. Then we create. So this is our table. So can you see WWI order details? So we are creating this table now. Now table action. Are we appending or overwriting? So because we don't have any data there before, so we can append. When you want to overwrite, means that you want to overwrite a particular information. But right now, let's just click on the appending, to click on the append because we are not trying to overwrite any data. So there are some other options like enable partitioning and all. So every other things here, we will leave it as it is. So we have selected our destination, our source, and our, we rename this our copy data activity. So the next thing to do is just to run our pipeline. So we are going to run our pipeline now. So let's see, yeah, save and run. Yes. So let's save and run our pipeline and see what is going to be the output of our pipeline. Our pipeline have started running. Can you see? Successful running. The pipeline has started running. So let's see the output of our pipeline in less than few seconds or minutes, depending on how large our data is. We should get the result of uh, our pipeline as well. Okay, so yeah, in the next, let's see, in the next, it shouldn't take time. Yeah, so if you observe that maybe your home pipeline takes longer time, it might due to network issue, depending on how fast your network is. So I think those are the things that um can also cause issues with or delay with the, so we can see now that okay, in 50 seconds, that's less than 1 minute. So in 50 seconds, our pipeline has run successfully. So you can see pipeline status succeeded. So now the next thing that we need to do is to go back to our lakehouse or okay, so let's go to workspace. So let's go to workspace. From our workspace, you can see from our workspace, you can see the pipeline that we created. Like I said, I like my work to be order. So I'm going to move this to the folder that I created earlier. So I'm moving into this folder. Okay, so I'll move it to this folder back. So now let's go back to our lake house. So I'm going to click on the lake house now, then let's refresh our lakehouse. So inside this lakehouse now, we will now see the table or the data that we ingested through the pipeline now. So it's refreshing. Let me refresh this. It's refreshing. Okay, let's okay, so it's there already. So we can now see that we have the other details file. Now that is fine. Okay, so the next way of ingesting data is through. So let's look at the file section first. So we'll look at the file section. So we are going to upload manually, like